everybody has challenges, not just
Yes.
me. We all do. Some are hidden. Mine is right out here in the open. You look at me, I got these gloves on. I'm in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
My, you can see my challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only difference is some of people's we can't see. They're struggling too.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Different Ability Podcast. And if you are watching it, welcome to Motivation Moment today. I have an incredible guest. I am so excited for you to meet him. His name is Rick Werry. And let's be real, I met him on Instagram. So I'm like, I always like to tell people, like, how did I meet this person or how did we get in touch? Yep, it's been social media yet again. And something popped up, and I'm like, who is this character? And I started following. I'm like, he's interesting. We should talk. So, hey, Rick, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. And yeah, with Instagram, uh, it's crazy this world we're in. Sometimes that's the best way to connect. So,
It really is. And again, it was like happenstance. I just saw, I don't remember, it was a post of yours. And I'm like, interesting. So I just followed. I'm like, hit the follow and I'm like, oh, he's an interesting guy. And then I'm like, then you did the reel. And I was like, game changer. I'm messaging him. So I will put a link to all that, you guys, so you can see it because it is pretty inspiring. So thank you for being on the Different Ability Podcast. And I want to dive right in because you have a story and you have a story to tell, and I want people to hear it. So, Rick, what was it like growing up as you? You, and a little bit where you're from, how you were as a kid. Like, what were you like when you were little?
well, I grew up on a dairy farm in a small town in Utah. And when I say small towns, like we don't talk about population, we gauge our towns by if you have a stoplight or not. And we don't have
Yes.
a stoplight in our town, and I grew up on a small dairy farm, had to milk cows twice a day for our family. We worked hard growing up, and that's what helped me fall in love with sports.
Yep.
Now, hear me out. So, if we were playing sports, we could get out of milking cows. So, so yeah, I just like I grew up. I'm the youngest of four siblings in a small town. I'm just a country boy.
Oh my gosh, Rick, we have like a lot in common. I mean, I'm not from a dairy farm, but I have a lot of friends because we're in Wisconsin, of course. And we all know that's a lot of dairy farms here. And I have so many friends that said the same thing you just did. That is so funny you said that. If you're in sports, you get out of milking.
Yeah,
Like, so that was
yeah,
totally, I had a couple friends that 100% played sports specifically for that. Now, I will say, because I didn't grow up on a dairy farm, and I grew up in the country though, and my grandpa had beef cows and a beef farm and everything. I actually enjoyed going to their farms to like help. But then like my friends noticed that and they're like, "Oh, we're going to capitalize on this.
yeah,
So we're inviting Katie over and then she'll like have to do the work." So
yeah.
that totally, not that they didn't do the work. It was just funny because it's like, "Hey, go get the calves fed, do that." And I'm like, "Okay." And then I'm like realizing, I'm like, wait a second. Like, I was like, you're totally capitalizing on me liking this, which is smart. It's a smart move.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we're very similar that way of having the dairy farm and farming industry. And I
yeah.
have to say, I grew up in a town with a zero stoplight as well. And there's a town, I have to say this because this is funny, that is near our town that they didn't even like justify um like the population by people. They're like there was more cows than people in the town. So like that's where we were like, okay, that's real. So for anyone else that is not from the country, now you're like, I don't ever want to live in a country in a small town. So well, thank you. Yeah, no, and that's so great and really relatable, I think, to more people than we both think that you work hard as a kid and you move forward that way. So that is awesome. What sports did you play?
I played just about anything, but my main three were baseball, football, and basketball.
So you did every season on purpose. So
Oh
you
yeah,
can
oh yeah,
like,
yeah.
that is
Oh yeah.
awesome.
I joined any club, any after school program. Yeah, can't milk cows. Got to go
Oh,
to
sorry.
Spanish Club.
Yep. That's awesome. Oh my gosh. So let's get to it, Rick, because that's why we're here. I want to talk about your story. I wanted to tell a little bit about or hear a little bit about, your past as a kid and, growing up in a small town in Utah. So can you tell me a little bit about the accident, as you call it, and the day that honestly your life changed? So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I get every time I tell a story, I hope it doesn't come off as I'm a klutz. But long story short, I was in a program with my wife where you it's called self-help housing. So we were just married a year at the time, um, and newlyweds. And in this self-help housing, you work on your own houses in order to build equity. It's like a form of low income housing, but you're working it off, you know.
Yep.
And one night I was working late with my friend Zach and his wife. And we were I was building a wall on the floor. And you nail the stud in, go to the next stud, nail the stud in, go to the next stud. And I got to the last stud on the wall and I hit a knot in the wood, and the nail like shot up, took a, like a 90-degree turn, and hit my thumb. And I'm like trying to act tough and everything. I'm with I'm with my friend Zach and Candace, and I'm like, Zach, just pull it out, you know. So it was in the like the web of my thumb right there. And so he took his Leatherman out, and I'm like just biting down on, my other glove, and he pulls it out. And remember, I told you I grew up on a dairy farm, so blood, um, mucus, all that stuff. I was never queasy in my life. But for this one moment, I was looking down at my thumb and I started to get lightheaded. So I decided to walk across the floor to get a drink. I don't know. I know that's not the cure for lightheadedness, but in my brain,
Yep.
that was the answer. So I started walking across the floor. And earlier that day, we had cut a hole in the floor, um, and we for the stairs to go down to the basement.
Hmm.
We hadn't built those stairs yet, and we never covered that hole. And I just passed out in the middle of my walk and just tipped over, completely over, upside down, and landed in the basement.
Oh my
And it
gosh.
like it was like the hole was like the perfect size, the perfect timing, and everything. I guess you could say unperfect timing,
Yeah.
but I fell and landed on my head, and I broke my neck right about here on the C6, C7 vertebrae. Now, for those of you who don't understand what that does for you, is I'm a quadriplegic, the technical term for it. So I'm in a wheelchair. I'm paralyzed from my chest down, and quad meaning four, if that makes sense,
Hmm.
means I have an impairment in all four limbs. I can move my arms, but this is weird, showing you my hands.
Yeah.
They're completely paralyzed. I can't open or close. The only thing I can do is like grasp things by rotating my wrist.
Sure.
So you've got to accept it as a challenge, because I mean, my neck was broken that day and it changed my life forever.
Oh my gosh, Rick. I am actually glad I didn't ask you that story before we got on here because that is so unbelievable. And coming from the building industry myself and being a designer and working on homes, literally walking like exactly like you talked about, being in those situations like terrifies me right now. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, anytime I'm sitting here like I gotta go tell everyone, cover that dang basement hole because like you don't think about it right away. And when you're out there building it, I mean, it's a freak accident, honestly, because I mean, any contractors you talk to,
Yeah.
you know, that's not something you just like, okay, cut the hole and whatever. got to put it in. I've walked through so many homes that the hole was still cut and you just had to be careful and walk around it.
Yeah.
Like,
If
and
anything, motivational speaking don't pan out, I should be a safety speaker. Huh?
you could, and
Yeah.
you should do both.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, motivational speaking will pan out, so don't worry. So,
Yeah.
but you should do both because that story in itself is like I'm just like in my mind going back to every single time I've walked on, and there's a lot because I used to design homes for a living, and you just going out and helping other friends, you walk out, you're like, oh, watch out for the hole because the basement stuff isn't ready yet,
Yeah.
like, and you just kind of like, and granted, most contractors do down the road put things over, be safe, whatever, but there's times that you're getting things done, and so that's exactly what you were doing.
Yeah.
And so, can you tell me a little bit about what it was like? Did you wake up in the basement or did you wake up in the hospital?
So I woke up in the basement, and I do remember um uh the ambulance coming and putting me on the stretcher. I remember it's so awkward. Like, I'm tall, I'm 6'2",
Yeah.
and they didn't know the best way because they had to keep me straight and my head and neck aligned and everything. And they they were struggling on how to get me out of the basement, like lift me up through the same hole, or like I think they ended up taking me through the window and out the window well and everything.
Wow.
But I do remember like the ambulance. Zach was my friend, was in the ambulance with me. I remember just telling him, I can't feel my legs. I'm like, Zach, that can't be good. And I just remember him like just he- I he was just very calm. I don't think he said like you're I don't remember the words, but I do remember he says you're gonna be fine.
Mm-hmm. Oh my
And
gosh.
I am fine, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
You're
here.
here.
I'm breathing. Yep.
Yes. We're talking. You are
Yeah.
doing incredible things. But I mean, how did that, first of all, that had to have been absolutely
Sorry.
terrifying. No, you're fine. It had to have been absolutely terrifying. And how did that go for contacting your wife?
Oh, yeah, um my friend Zach's wife ended up calling her, and she drove to the local hospital, and we talked there, and she said I was very calm, which is good, I guess. But
Yeah.
um she um she was kind of scared, but she's been my rock, like, through everything, and I do remember, so I was life flighted up to Provo, Utah. And so my dad was like, you shouldn't drive up there. So my dad drove her. And my
Yeah.
dad is one of the slowest drivers ever. And it was night. So granted, I mean, you got to look for deer. And my wife
Yeah.
said she just like looked over at the speed limit, or at the odometer, and like, you can drive faster, but I mean,
Your dad was being cautious, but she's like, hurry
my
up.
neck was already broken,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and did
Yeah,
she
so I
know
mean,
that officially?
I
Like,
was like calm.
did she know that though
No,
when she was driving?
I don't think so. I'd have
Okay.
to ask her, but yeah, I don't think she knew like the extent of my paralysis.
Sure, sure. So how did you feel like when they officially told you, "Hey, Rick, you are never gonna walk again"?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was always in denial at first.
Mm-hmm.
I would be like, I'm gonna get up and walk out of this bed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when I explain to people, like, yeah, you could have all the drive in the world. I always talk to people about looking at a light and then that cord that runs to the switch.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you flip that switch, but say that cord's damaged or broke, you can try and flip that switch as hard as you can, and granted, if you're in that situation, I never want you to give up. I
Yeah.
never want you to, say, I'm paralyzed, don't try. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you gotta try on your end of everything. But to the extent of my paralysis, that's a good analogy, you know.
Mhm.
And I remember laying in the hospital bed, and just this was like the first time it really hit me, you know.
Mhm.
I remember laying flat on my back in bed, and I remember going to scratch my nose like this, you know.
Mhm.
And I had lost that tricep muscle to hold my head or my hand up into the sky to scratch my nose. So my hand just fell on my face, you know.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
remember looking down and you amazed how fast your body atrophies when you don't use it. Like a couple weeks later, I remember looking at my arms just really, really skinny, and I was like, "What is this? Is what is?" And I'm like, "This is gonna be hard," you know.
Yeah. How long were you in the hospital for?
I was in the ICU for about 6 weeks.
Wow.
There was a lot of complications because that night it was in March, and I laid in a pool of ice slash water on concrete. So
Yeah.
I caught pneumonia
Oh my
and a
gosh.
quadriplegic, newly paralyzed lungs. Um, and pneumonia is not a good. So I ended up being put in a coma, like medically induced coma,
Wow.
so that I could be stabilized and on breathing. I was on this like mask that does your breathing for you.
Yep.
Um, and it just sucked, you know. But slowly I got out of the ICU, and then I went to a unit which really changed my life, is the rehab unit.
Yeah.
And the moment, this is why I tell my story right here. The moment that changed my life and really made me look at it from a different perspective is when there was a nurse that came into my hospital room, and I remember feeling down that day. And she was always just upbeat. She was a good nurse because we were a team. And so
Yeah.
everything we would do, we would work together. And some things she would help me with, some things she'd be like, "You got this on your own." But she came into my room and hung up a red calendar on the wall, and had a or not a red calendar. She hung up a calendar
Mhm.
with a red marker on it, one of those Sharpies. And she said, "Every time you can accomplish something that you couldn't do yesterday, we're going to write it down. We have to document our successes.
Yes.
And we'll call it a red letter day." And so that's the title of my book. And like for me, back then, a red letter day was something like to be able to sit to the side of your bed for 5 minutes without passing out,
Oh my
to be
God.
able to wheel your wheelchair down the hall for 100 yards without asking for help. Those were like the smallest little accomplishments, but they were big to me because yesterday I couldn't do that.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much. Taking those little, first of all, congrats to that nurse for being an amazing human being, for thinking of that. Like, and I love that you said that she made you feel like you guys were a team, because that's exactly what it's about. Like, no one's in this life alone, and we're all a part of a team to make this world better, right? And to make each of our lives happy and successful and whatever we want, right? Each person's a little different. And I love that the book you're writing, it's called The Red Letter Day. That is gave me chills. I'll say that right now. Like, granted, it is very cold here in Wisconsin, but it gave me chills because it is so true. Those tiny little accomplishments and moments, and that goes for anything, any little moment in your life. It doesn't have to be these big, huge things. All these little things can add up to something so beautiful. And that's exactly what it did, because in my opinion, when I'm hearing from you, those red letter days made up this whole accomplishment of you being able to get out of that hospital, and be very successful in what you are doing today, and inspiring people on Instagram, seeing a picture first, and then bam, you throw out a amazing reel that made me cry, and I sent it to so many people being like, check this guy out. This is so incredible. It is it is unlike anything else. I just can't even. It is so great. And like, I'm so proud of you, but I'm just like, so just, gosh, that's why nurses are so awesome. Like, they're just
Oh,
the best. So, oh,
yeah, I married one. My wife is a nurse. So, I
see,
mean,
there you
you talk
go.
about like, you talk about the hand you're dealt. And yeah, I'm in a wheelchair and this is hard, but I was dealt the best wife ever. She's a saint.
You could
She's
not have
probably going to
gotten a
be
better
walking in
one.
the door right now from her night shift. So, yeah.
So you couldn't get a better person to like live your life with. This is specifically for this because, this happens. I mean, I don't know because it hasn't happened in anyone in my life, but it's like, I, you know, I talk to, my fiance. It's like, hey, if something goes wrong, whatever happens, we're here for each other no matter what. But man, having a nurse as a wife, even better. So,
Oh, yeah.
that is incredible. And I love that you even like, not that you wouldn't, but you acknowledge it and you're like, she is the best. And that is so wonderful to hear because, again, this is your story, but there are people around you that are also involved in your story every single day. And so I think it's beautiful the way you talk about that. And it's very inspiring for me as someone that is going to get married here in the next year or so, being like, yeah, we're through this through thick and thin. Like, we're in this. And no matter what. And I think that you're a perfect and amazing example of that. And I'm so glad you shared that too, because that is a big part of it. So that is really amazing. And I love that you share that. So thank you for sharing those things. And oh my gosh, we have so much more to talk about. I'm so excited to talk more. All right. So here's the deal. What else? I want people to hear about the amazing journey you're on and what you are doing. Like, again, go follow him on Instagram by itself because, gosh, the things that you do. But you're still athletic. You still do all of these wonderful things. If you want to take me through that journey of, you left the hospital and your life has changed, right? And you have to go through all of those different steps and things like that. How did that look and what was that like for you?
Okay, I want to, before I start bragging, you know, because I do play rugby and I hand
Okay.
cycle, but I want to talk about kind of like a dark moment for me.
Yes.
And this is why, because I feel like, no, sorry, I want to put my thoughts together, but
That's
I was
fine.
listening to a podcast the other day, and he's kind of a funny guy. His name's Theo Vaughn, and I remember just seeing like a short reel. I love those reels because they tell a story. And he's telling about the game Mario. We all played Mario when we were kids, right?
Mhm.
And he says, man, if Mario were a game and all you did was just run across that green field to the finish line, there's no challenges, no nothing. You probably put the controller down after 1 minute. It's
Mhm.
boring, you know. Mario is the reason why we all got addicted to that game when we were kids. It's because we failed, you know, because we would get hit by that fire breathing dragon.
Yes.
We'd fall in the crack in the floor. And that's what life is about. We're set. We all got challenges. Life is about challenges, and that's why life is so good,
Mhm.
because we have our hard times, but we have our good times.
Mhm.
And like I said, before I talk about my red letter days, my successes, I
Yeah.
want to tell you just about my hard time and
Yes.
why it became such a good time. I remember I live in a small town in like a little cul-de-sac, and there's houses around it. There's a lot of bare lots. But right after I I didn't have that will to live. I mean, I was my lowest point in my life right then. I remember telling myself that if I could push myself in the river, I was going to do it. Okay, so my neighborhood is set up to where there's a canal that runs across the the neighborhood, and it's like around half of a block and up a little bit of a hill. And I knew it was going to be a challenge because I didn't think I could push my wheelchair up that hill.
Mhm.
And so um, I thought I had to like build up some stamina to do that. So I started to just push around the house a little more, push up and down the you know, street a little bit more. I really started to try to do better,
Mhm.
willing myself for that sole purpose of pushing myself up that hill. Now, there was a certain day I remember that I was gonna, do it. For lack of a better term, I was ready.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking it's gonna be a challenge to get up that hill. And so I pushed around the block and I got up to that top of that hill. Now, what's crazy to me is the my mindset when I got to the top of that hill. It was a small success, just a really small success. I looked at the bottom of that, from the top of that hill to the bottom, and when I say hill, it's like just a small slope.
Yeah.
In wheelchairs, hills are slopes, slopes are hills.
Yep.
But I got up there and I looked back and I was like, that's something I couldn't do yesterday.
Mhm.
So what was cool is I didn't think about pushing myself into the river that day. I thought about what more can I do?
Oh
So
my
that
God.
day, instead of pushing myself in the river, I pushed myself around the block. I got
Wow.
home and my wife, I know she was kind of like, just watching me. And she was so proud of me when I got home. She's like, you couldn't do that yesterday. And immediately I thought back to that nurse, the
Mhm.
red letter days. And I'm like, why not apply that to my whole life? I get the chance to start from scratch again. I could just start from zero. I
Mhm.
couldn't push up the street. And then I accomplished something like push around the block.
Yeah.
And every time I get like that feeling of complacency, like I feel like, Kyle, you need to do something more. You need to
Mhm.
do something to make yourself proud. Then something always comes to my head. You know, hey, you've ridden your bike last year. You rode your bike 400 miles. Let's try for five. And I'm always just trying to like create a red letter day, something that can improve upon myself, and that's why I feel like I want to be a motivational speaker, why I want to share my book, because everybody has challenges, not just
Yes.
me. We all do.
Mhm.
Some are hidden. Mine is right out here in the open. You look at me, I got these gloves on. I'm in a wheelchair.
Mhm.
My, you can see my challenges.
Mhm.
And that's the only difference is some of people's we can't see. They're struggling too.
I okay. First, I have a lot. Oh my gosh. I am so grateful that when you got to that top of that hill, because it's a hill. I don't care how small it's a hill. And I am so grateful you turned back around and said, "What else can I do?" and keep going because what I this is going to sound weird. What I like about the story you just told is that it shows that you're human and you have very difficult days. Everyone does. I'm literally over here crying. So if you want to see Katie cry, go on YouTube. Um it that is so inspiring and you keep saying why I want to be a motivational speaker. You are a motivational speaker. Your story, you don't have to have some kind of accolades. You don't have to say you've been speaking for years. You are a motivational speaker right now because You've motivated me. You've inspired me. You've gave me chills. I'm crying. So, and I'm crying because it's like, I'm so proud to like even be able to be in the same Zoom room with you right now because of the challenges you went through. And I know we've talked about it and I've had other people talk about it. It's like, I love that you say everyone has challenges. I mean, you can't see mine. My disability or my different ability is a hidden one. You can't physically see it. So when people say to you, "Oh yeah, you don't have," yeah, I do. It's not like I have to like one up anyone. No, it's just everyone has challenges, and I love that you say that and you acknowledge that because first of all, yeah, you can see yours, and I will say you have a lot of challenges, but the way you go about it is really beautiful. And not to say that you don't have bad days, because I'm sure you do, like everyone else. But thank you for acknowledging that in general and telling that story. And thank you for stopping me and telling that story. I love that you did that because it's like that is so much more impactful and it needed to be said and heard because there are people that are going to be listening to this that are having a bad day right now. There are going to be people that are waking up, listening to this podcast. Thank you for listening, or watching this YouTube show and saying, "Oh, today is just the worst." And then they hear that and say, "What's my red letter day? What
Yeah.
do I have to do? What can I do to achieve great things today?" And it can be something so small. I don't want people to think it can't be. It can be that you got up and you got your hair done because that's what I'm pretty grateful for today for myself. Like, my hair looks okay today. Like those little moments and those little red letter days add up. And that's what you were you are the epitome of that. You are showing that right now. And again, like when people go and follow you on Instagram, Facebook, and all the places and read your book when it's published, everything, they're going to be like, wow, look at all these red letter days that he went through and what he is doing and still doing. That's going to inspire people every single day for the rest of all of our lives and to come. So, thank you for being here and being vulnerable enough to tell your story, share the great things and the really difficult things. And don't worry, we still have some really great things to come.
Yeah.
So, because you are doing some amazing things, but I just am so grateful that you brought up a really hard time because those are hard to talk about.
Yeah.
And again, your wife just having you come inside and she's so proud of you. That's the support. That is the things that we all need to give each other and cheer each other on. I don't know you from anyone. I found like, we met on Instagram, like, and I mean, I know you now, but not in person or anything. And I'm cheering you on. You're cheering me on. We cheer each other on and help each other out. And that's what's so beautiful. And that's what this world is about, in my opinion. So, and you are literally doing that every single day. And I applaud you for that. So thank you.
So can I tell another story?
Yes, this is
Okay.
your
So,
story
all
time. You
right. So,
tell as many
yeah.
stories.
So that reminds me, when you have like cheerleaders cheering you on and stuff. So, like I told you, I grew up on a dairy farm and
Yep.
didn't really, I didn't really get to visit my grandparents very much. Um, so if you look back at my post, I made a post about my grandpa a little while ago, and it's kind of important to me to tell this story. See, I didn't know my grandpa very well, and he died a few years back. Well, I went to the funeral, and he grew up in a small town called Howe, Idaho, and population smaller than no stoplights. So,
Yes.
okay, so we went to the funeral, and I remember going there as a kid a couple times, but not much. The funeral home is also the post office and the general store. It's that small of a town. Everybody knows everybody. But when my dad, he spoke at my grandpa's funeral, and he said this about my grandpa. His name's Sid Weary, by the way. He said Sid had the ability to attract the greatest people around him, and he expected the best out of those people when they were with him. And what my dad did so eloquently when he spoke it, he complimented everybody there. I mean, he's like, because you knew Sid,
Yes.
you like both you like lift puffed your chest out because you were
Mm-hmm.
like that much cooler.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded of the quote from Jim Rohn's. I don't know if you know this, but the quote goes like this: it says, "You are an average of the five people you spend the most time with."
Yes.
Right? So,
Yes.
so Sid brought those other people's average up, and we can all like check ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Are you bringing people's averages up, or are you bringing people's averages down?
Oh.
I hope that we're all in this together, cheer everybody on. Be a cheerleader.
Oh my, I love that you just asked that question. Like, are you bringing other people's averages up? Or are you bringing them down? I truly, maybe I'm just crazy. I've never heard that before. And I love that. I have heard Jim Rohn's saying the five people, and that is so true. Like, I mean, it seems like you have a pretty awesome crew around you at all times, which is amazing. And that
Yeah.
says a lot about you as well. So I'm pretty sure Sid's looking down, being like proud of you because you surround yourself with pretty amazing people yourself. But at different times in our lives, we've all had to say, like, are you bringing this up? Are you, contributing to this great life in a positive way, or are you negative? Because if you sit around negative people, you're going to be negative. If you sit
Yeah.
around positive people, you're going to be positive and want to keep going. So I love that. Are you bringing like the ear average up or down? Oh, so good. So good.
Right? Yeah.
That is so good. And I love that story about your grandpa. And I love that you took that away because a lot of people could have sat there and just said, yeah, he really liked a lot of people. He was a really great guy. Oh, he's cool. But you took way more out of it and you read between your dad's lines. And that
Yeah.
is so cool. So cool. I
So
love that
if
story.
you ever go to my Instagram, you'll see a picture of Sid.
Yep.
Oh, I just wish I could place myself in that time, in that
Yes.
era. Yeah, it's a picture of him on the USS Arizona. He was in the Navy. Oh, I just wish I could have been there with him and hung out. I
Yes.
would love to place myself at that point in time.
I love like I feel the same way. I do tell people I am like I should have been like born in like the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, somewhere in there because I love and maybe it's just me being I like learning about people. I've said that I can literally go to a random park, sit on a bench and talk to a stranger, especially if they're an old lady or man. I will sit there and just be like, "Tell me about your life." Like I
Yeah.
just want to hear the stories. I just love hearing those stories because they've went through so much more than me in my 31 years of life and I want to learn from other people and I feel the same way. I lost my grandpa when I was really young. On my mom's side and my grandma both. And I'm like, I want to hang out with them more.
Yeah.
I want to hang out with. He's so cool. Crew cut, haircut, tough guy. Um he had a different ability as well. He had his leg fused as a kid because he got sick and hurt or like 10 years old or something. And so he couldn't bend his knee, but he was a master plumber. How do you
Oh, okay.
like master plumber? He owned his own business, did an amazing job. Anyone in that small town knew him, still knows him, knows his name, but he was a master plumber and could not bend his knee. So that is, and my mom always said he could run up the stairs faster than anyone, especially if we were in trouble. So, like, chase him up the stairs or whatever. So, I just love that. And I love that you told that story about your grandpa and, then your dad. That's really great. That's amazing. So, oh, so good. So good. But no, he's watching over you right now, being like,
Oh, yeah.
gosh, the things you're doing, so proud. And that's what I remember, especially with my grandparents that have passed, is like, I just remember when I'm having a tough day, it's like, no, get up. They're watching. Like, I
Yeah.
want them to know that I'm doing good, and doing great things for the world. So, all right, Rick, tell me some things. What are you doing now? What are some of the, first of all, I want to learn about the sports you do because, again, hashtag awesome.
Yeah.
And then what else are you so first I want to learn a bit about the sports, but I also want to hear about what your goals, some of your goals and dreams. You don't have to tell all the secret ones or anything, but a couple of your goals and dreams, because hopefully people hear this and they're like, I need to talk to Rick. Because who doesn't?
All right, so yeah, so now it's time to brag, right? So
Yes,
no,
please.
I so I remember doing therapy and I saw a picture on the wall of like these two guys in a like a looked like a armored wheelchair,
Yep.
and they're holding up a rugby ball, like it looked like a volleyball covered in like grease and stuff. And I'm like, what is that? And I never thought of much about it. And then I saw, I think it was a post on social media about this is something like, if you want to smash, come show up here. And
Yeah.
so like I'm like, well, I need to learn more about this. And so I ended up just calling, and they're like, yeah, you should come try. You have to be a quadriplegic to play, or you have to have impairment in all four limbs. And I showed up to this gym, and I remember a lady named Susie. It was the off season, and so nobody was there, but she opened up and showed me all these chairs, and they were like, I'm like, this is something out of like Mad Max movie. Like these chairs are like welded together. There's like, you can see like there's some that are busted all the heck. I'm like, who does this? And so she helped me get in a chair that day and push around and taught me a few things. But she said, you're gonna have to come back because you should play in the season. And this is quite a drive. It's up to Salt Lake.
Yep.
At the time, we were the Salt Lake Scorpions, and like this professional, like these guys, I show up and thinking like, oh yeah, this is like rec league type stuff, and these guys all have stories just like me. They're all like pushing out there, and I'm like huffing and puffing, and the so it's a co-ed sport, and there's a girl, and it's hard to not compare disabilities.
Yeah.
But we all pretty much are quadriplegics. Some have a little more function and some less. And I'm like getting my butt kicked by this girl, and like I'm the slowest person on the court, most heaviest overweight. I'm like, this is real stuff. And then we start hitting, and I mean these chairs are built to like ram the hell out of each other. I mean it's just, if you ever get a chance to see it, or there is like a small documentary about it,
Okay.
and when they invented the sport, they called it murder ball. Yeah, really, murder ball, and they end up having to change the name because they couldn't get sponsors for murder ball. So yeah, but now Salt Lake team kind of fell apart. So now I play for the Las Vegas High Rollers,
Oh my.
and so it's a lot of driving and a lot of
Yeah.
just road trips. We play in tournaments, which usually like last the weekend,
Hmm.
and there's like three divisions, and these guys don't mess around. Like this is it's a Paralympic sport, and I remember playing one practice up in Salt Lake. We start our practices by pushing a mile, 16 laps around the gym.
Wow.
And I was at lap 8. This kid came to visit us, and he plays for Team USA. His name's Josh Wheeler. He finished his 16 when I was at 8.5 laps. He is
Wow.
fast and just efficient pusher, and just, oh yeah, there's so many inspirational stories in this community of rugby players. They all have the same stories, different, just different perspectives. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. So
That is so cool. I'll have to see if I can like we'll have to share a picture or something of you playing rugby. Like it is so cool. Like again, when I
yeah,
like been watching on social media, it's like what is he doing? Like what
yeah.
are they? I'm like what is this? That is so cool. And you said you bike as well.
Yeah. So that's my hand cycle has brought me a lot of uh, a lot of joy in my
Yeah.
life. So I learned about this adaptive hand cycles where you pedal with your arms like this.
Hmm.
And I applied for a grant through the Challenged Athletes Fund. The hand cycle was like 6 grand,
Yep.
and the Challenged Athletes Fund helped me pay like just about all of the money for this hand cycle. and it's so cool because it is true. Now, when I say it's true, it's just like anything else. You start out and you might not be able to push around the block, but you can build stamina and you can
Yep.
improve.
Yep.
Now, this hand cycle is no different. When I started out, I had to like tape my hands in, not safe by any means, no
Yep.
brakes.
Yep.
And I could barely make it around the block. And slowly I built stamina. Now, last year I rode, partly due to Corona, I had more time.
Yep.
I rode the my longest mileage in one ride and my longest mileage per year.
Oh
It's
my God.
a, I
Well,
have this.
what were they?
Okay, so my I rode 900 miles last year on my hand cycle.
What?
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh my God.
10, 15 miles at a time, usually, 2 or 3 times a week. And yeah, so, and then my longest distance in one ride, last year is kind of funny because like there are adaptive, like yeah, there's other communities, but I'm the only quad in my town, and like the next quad I know closest doesn't hand cycle, so I just signed up for a bike ride with regular people, and
Yeah.
it's called the Rooster Ride, and there were 40 miles, 100 miles, and 150, and I signed up for the no, actually 35 miler, and so I just signed up for it and showed up, and of course I was last, but like the cops were helping me through, like escorting me through the streets and stuff. And there's one hill that I knew I couldn't go over. So I went around and like I actually added miles to the race.
Sure.
So it ended up being 39 miles in
Okay.
one morning.
That is okay. Okay. Hold on. First of all, you said you finished last. You were not last. You finished. Like, and
Yeah.
also you get a police escort. I mean, I think that's probably the coolest part of it. I don't think anyone in the front got a police escort because they were awesome. So
Yeah.
that is 39 miles in like with your arms. Like, okay, I need to get back on my bike because I don't like, we live in, call it God's country, and there's a lot of hills, and you don't realize how big these hills are until like like until you're biking over them, right? And of course I have like regular bike, I don't have a hand bike, and I can't hardly get off my bike sometimes because my legs hurt. So like you're like wobbly or whatever. Nope, I have no excuses now. Nope, I
Yeah.
gotta go biking 39 miles. That is in 901 year. That is such an amazing accomplishment, and that is again inspiring for people to like
Yeah.
listen and say, like here I am saying, Katie, do better. Like I'm
Yeah.
just like, you can do better, and that's true though, because that is holy cow. Wow. Wow. That is congrats. That is
Oh,
amazing.
it's all due to this, like, I don't know if you want to call it addicting, but there's an app on my phone called Strava.
Okay.
And it keeps track of your miles per hour, your distance, and
Yep.
everything. And I'm like, my wife complains because I'll get back and she'll be like, "How was your ride?" And I'm like, "I didn't beat my record." And I'm like, she's like, "I wish you would just enjoy a bike ride one time. Stop, take pictures, like just
Yes.
enjoy the scenery." I'm like, "Nope, I got to beat that record, every
Right.
time." And like, I go the same routes, like, and I'm always, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but like I'm always like, at this point, I need to be at this time to
Hmm.
be on pace. If I'm behind, I got to kick it up.
Yep.
But yeah, every once in a while, I'll be like, okay, I'm not gonna break a record. I need to just stop and enjoy the ride. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's addicting.
Yeah. No, that's it's a very good addiction. Go out there and whether you just one day just enjoy the ride or you want to go beat something. That's competition within yourself is not an issue in my book.
Yeah,
I don't always say I'm not competing with anyone. I'm competing with myself every day. Like I want to better myself a little bit every single day. And so, oh, Okay. Any last story you want to tell before we tell everyone how to find you, where they can follow, what you're doing upcoming?
So yeah, I'll just tell one last thing. You've mentioned my goal or super dream, whatever.
Yep.
So this has been 3 years in the making because, uh, well, long story short, I want to do the Salt Lake Marathon, and I want to do it with my friend Andy, who is also in hand cycle. We've been working together and talking about this for 3 years, and here's why. So last year we were going to do it. Um, we were going to do Salt Lake Marathon. We have the goal of riding it in 2 hours and 45 minutes. That's qualifying for the Boston Marathon. And how
Whoa.
cool it'd be to travel across the country and do the Boston Marathon. So,
Amazing.
okay, so here's the thing. Why it's so valuable, it will be so valuable to me is because last year it got canceled, the Salt Lake Marathon, because of Corona. And
Yep.
I was like so geared up and ready for it. The year before that, in the marathon is, I want to say it's like April or May or
Hmm.
March. I'm not sure. It's still kind of cold in Salt Lake. 2 years ago, we like in the hand cyclists start first,
Hmm.
so you have to be up there like at 5 and be in your bike at 5. So we drove up there, my wife and family, and my wife's like, "I'm just getting you ready and out the door, and then I'll take care of the kids." And there was help up to the starting line to help me get in and everything. I got all ready to go, and I didn't look outside, but it was raining down low at the elevation and I'm like, I can handle rain, but it got canceled for all the hand cyclists because there was a couple inches of snow on the ground. And so
Ugh.
that year I got canceled. So it's like I hope they do it this year because I've been preparing and everything. But the cool thing about that year is I carb loaded, I mean I
Yeah.
did everything right? I like prepared, I got everything. And I'm like, they canceled it. And my wife's like, oh, and I'm like, and I was frustrated. She could see that. And this is a really cool story. This is why this paints a picture of how badass my wife is, right? So
Yes.
I was discouraged. I'm like, I wanted to do it. So she's like, can you think of 26 miles you can ride around our neighborhood when we get home? And I'm like, yeah, I know a route. I've been training it. So she took me up and dropped me off 26 miles away.
Oh my,
And she got the boys to string toilet paper across the road when I finished.
oh my
And like
gosh.
my boys made me like a little paper medal with like a golden thing. And I still did the 26 miles. I don't remember if that year the Boston Marathon wasn't like in my brain, so I don't know if I made the qualification for that.
Sure.
But I finished, and like my wife did it all. Like she's like prepared. She had a couple of my friends there,
Oh my
and it was better. Like I did my own marathon.
That is
So
the coolest story, and it's even better that your boys had toilet paper strung
yeah,
across. Like that is the cool. They were probably so proud to be a part of that and be like, "Look, we can celebrate and have the medal that we made for them." Oh my gosh, my heartstrings are all pulled. Like
oh yeah,
that is the coolest, and congrats! Like again, 26, the amount of miles like you're doing with your arms is just unbelievable to me, and it's so, I mean, I believe you, but it's unbelievable at the same time. Like it is so inspiring, and taking something for, you know before the accident, you just building houses, doing your thing, hanging out with your friends, doing like amazing things with your life, right? The accident happens, and yes, you do have difficult days and difficult moments just like everyone, but look at how many amazing things you're doing now, right? And you haven't given up that life. You're like, what else can I do? And here's the coolest thing for me, because I personally don't have kids, but I love kids, is look what you're showing your boys. Like look at the example you are giving them and even your wife of being an incredible human being and never giving up. You never give up. You were like, nope, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to, oh, it got canceled. watch me. I'm going to go do it myself then. Like
Yeah.
that is so amazing. And just, I am so like honored and kind of like in shock that we're sitting here chatting still. I'm like, this is the coolest thing. And
Yeah.
just listening to this story, and I'm so looking forward to still connecting and collaborating on things. There are things we've already talked about secretly, like
Yeah.
of, oh, when we're gonna do a conference someday, like in person when we can again, and we're gonna speak on stages together. Like it is in two different, very different perspectives, of course, but the message of never giving up. And again, your red letter days. I love that so much. So Rick, where can people connect with you? Uh, Tell me a little bit about the book and what you're looking to do with that, because I know that's really important. And uh, whatever you want to tell me, I guess. But where can people find you, connect with you? And we'll keep it all in the show notes of the podcast. I'll put everything in the YouTube descriptions. I'll do a blog post on all this. Everyone will be able to get connected with you, but let's tell them anyways.
Yeah. So I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and yeah, just I'm just trying to make those tell more stories. Like I don't post a picture of my dinner, I like
Yeah.
I try to be motivational in those too, but the reason why I'm trying to like build I guess a following, no, not a following, but like an audience is because
Yep.
I am in the process of writing a memoir, and I want to tell, kind of the same story, like, and little stories that were my red letter days,
Mhm.
and that's what I want to, to just share my story in all platforms. Um, if you're interested in, anything like podcast or motivational speaking, I
Mhm.
just like sharing my story. I like that, I don't know if it's Garth Brooks song, like I'm an old troubadour. I just
Yeah.
like telling stories, so that's
Yes.
me, So connect with me if you interested, if
Yeah.
whatever,
Either way, you're not gonna, this is not the last time you're gonna hear of this guy, because I'm sure we'll be doing some fun things down the road. And yeah, I have so many things rolling in my mind already. And just sharing that story, and that's the biggest message again with the Different Ability podcast, is that we all have different abilities. And let's celebrate our differences and inspire people by just sharing our stories, because I do believe stories connect people. I mean, gosh, the first story you told about being a kid in a small town growing up on a dairy farm, I'm like, I connect with that. I mean, I didn't grow up on one, but I was like free work for one. Like I just like I connect with that, and then being able to connect with different parts of your stories. If anyone listens to this and doesn't connect somehow to your story, I don't know if they were really listening. So everyone can connect in some way to someone's story. And I'm just really grateful and honored that you were willing and wanted to come on this podcast really early in the morning. I just want you all to know that Central Time, we started this at 7 a.m. and it's 6 a.m. where he is. So, well, now it's 7, now it's 8 here. But we got up early to chat this morning. So I just really
yeah,
appreciate your time, and I cannot I cannot wait to still collaborate with you and keep following and seeing what you're up to, and cheering you on from Wisconsin. And then when I can travel, I love Provo. I've been there. My my uncle had passed away, and we went out there many years ago. It is one of my favorite places I've ever been. It's Provo, Utah. So I need to go out and just go do a lot of traveling around Utah here in the near future when we can safely travel again.
and we'll go for a bike ride or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thanks for bringing that up. I love my bike right now. Yes, we will. And if you ever want to go ice skating, you just let me know. Have you ever done that yet?
No, I haven't. They do have adaptive stuff for like
Mhm.
people do ho adaptive hockey. So
See, I like
yeah,
ice skating and I need to practice again. So, and I'm sure you guys have no shortage of ice and cold out in Utah. So,
no, yeah,
well, Rick, thank you so very much for being on the Different Ability podcast and my Motivation Moment show on YouTube. I am so grateful for meeting you. And that is another thing, guys. The power of social media can be a great thing and connect with really wonderful people like you heard here and saw today. Rick Werry, thank you so very much. And remember, everyone, all of his information, you can find it below or everywhere I post it. So thank you. Thank you. Have an amazing day, and go give those boys some love and start your day out great. It started out great for me. So thank you.
Thank you.
See you.